Yeah, we are live.
Hey everyone, the welcome to our awesome blockchain stream. So today we are going to be developing games on blockchain, and we are backed by Moralis Web3. So we have a very special guest here today. Harsh will be introducing him in some moments, and Harsh, you can go ahead. I'll do the other announcements.
Sure. So, hi guys. We are today here to learn more about the game development and blockchain. So, blockchain is a very new, fascinating industry which has been seeing an exponential growth, and a lot of people do feel FOMO about not knowing what is going on. As in this tech industry, it's you need to be aware about the latest trends and having so much hype all about it all over Twitter, all over YouTube. And someone does people do feel FOMO that what do I like, how do I get into this and what should you do? The answer is like you can just taste it a little bit and have some experience about it, like build up a small project. And that's what we are going to do today. We'll be building a small project which can be your first project into this world, and then you if you have fun building it, then you can pursue it and deep dive into it. So yeah, today we are here with one of the cool Moralis mages, David, and David will be walking us through about game development with Moralis. So yeah, hi David.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah.
How is everybody today? So, my name is David, and I'm with Moralis. And what I do there is I work with Unity, and Unity is a 3D game processing engine, and it allows you to quickly create 3D and 2D games. And then the Moralis SDK allows you to connect your games to all the Web3 stuff that you hear about, whether it's DeFi or minting NFTs, connecting to the wallets, transferring funds, and everything. So what I want to do today is to give an overview of what Moralis is, why you want to use Moralis, why you want to use Unity 3D over some of the other game engines that are out there. I want to walk you through the tools on Moralis, and then also a sample application that we've put together that kind of demos our SDK and shows it off and shows some of the things that you can do. And then depending on time, we'll also try to get into the code itself. And hopefully at that point, you'll have some questions. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat, and one of the moderators will let me know, and we'll try to get those answered. We're also going to talk about some important tools that you can use with Moralis and with Unity 3D to create your games. And then we'll end with some questions and answers as well. But again, if you have questions specific to what we're talking about, especially the code or Moralis or Unity 3D during the presentation, please go ahead and ask those. Okay.
Yeah, so as you guys heard, it's gonna be a fun session, and it would be like beginner friendly. So if you are someone who is like just getting into this, and this is the stream for you. If you are someone who is experienced but now wants to get into Unity, this is for you. And yeah, like if you have any questions, I'll read out them to David, and we'll have David to solve them out. And yeah, so David, I'll just give you the flow. I'll go in the backstage, and yeah, have fun.
Very good. Thank you. So why use Moralis? If you've been a game developer, you know that the majority of your time is spent putting the server together in the back end. The part of the game that is going to store data, that is going to take care of user accounts. If it's a multiplayer game, the part of the game that's going to allow the users to interact with each other and with the world. If you've tried to create a DApp or a decentralized application that uses Web3 crypto programming, then you know that you've somehow got to connect your application to the blockchain. And that can be a little daunting and have a lot of, create a lot of work for the development team. Almost 60 or more % of your time is going to be spent on the back end. Well, Moralis takes care of all of that for you. It does all the heavy lifting, so you can concentrate on your game, in this case, or if you're creating a dApp, on your dApp, on the UI and the actual functionality of your application, the part that makes it really special. So Moralis takes care of all the heavy lifting in the back end. So what does it offer? It offers a database. It offers connectivity to the blockchain. It allows you to create little micro applications that we call cloud functions. You can create plugins or consume plugins. So plugins are small applications that kind of tie your application in Moralis with other functionality. For example, one of the popular ones is the OpenSea plugin. And that plugin allows you to talk directly to the OpenSea API through your application. So what else? And I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the joys of live stream, things happen. Okay, so we talked about the database, the cloud functions, plugins. But one of the coolest things that Moralis does, one of the things I think is the biggest benefit that you'll get is all the data that come into the different blockchains. Oh, and I forgot to mention, not only is it Ethereum, but there's Binance, there's Polygon, Avalanche, and Arbitrum, and then there'll be others as well, other chains that we'll be connecting to, including Solana. So as you know, thousands and thousands of transactions cross these chains every second. So every time a block is created, there are a lot of transactions that are included in each of those blocks. Those blocks they emit events, and trying to sort through all those data, especially if you're trying to do like a historical search, or maybe you're trying to follow a transaction and the account and find out all the transactions that that account took part in, or maybe you want to trace all the owners of an NFT and learn its history. That is a lot of data you have to sort through, especially if you're going against a chain by itself. What Moralis does is it takes all of those events, all of those data points, and it captures them real time in a database, and then it indexes them so that you can do very quick searches. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. Okay, so one thing with gaming, if you've been in crypto, you've been in gaming, you've probably heard about non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And for the most part, we have used these as something to look at. We see them on OpenSea and on other NFT platforms. However, through the power of Moralis, we can actually search these NFTs. We can see what NFTs are owned by your user. And then you can actually use those NFTs in your games. And so there is an interface or API that we call the Web3 API, or we can also call it the NFT API, that allows you to do real-time searches and then use those data, including the metadata and the contract data for an NFT inside your application. And so I'll be going over that in a little bit as well. Some other things I wanted to touch on before we actually touch the Moralis server. Another big reason to use Moralis is the community. So we have a huge community. We have a Moralis team that is very engaged with the community. So whether you're in Discord or on the Unity forums, there are people available 24/7 to just talk, walk through issues that you run into, help with ideas, allow you to, if you run into a bug or something like that, or something that's not working quite the way you expect it to, you can put that in the forum and get your questions answered. So just real quick, I want to kind of go over to the Moralis Discord. And if you haven't gone there yet, join the Moralis DAO server. And specifically, I want to look at a couple of the channels. There's the game dev channel, and something else that Shiv has put together is the Moralis in India channel. And so you might find, yeah, we're big into memes. You'll find other people that are working on projects that you can interact with, as well as all of our team members. And then one more cool thing with the Discord that you'll find is we have a weekly challenge that you can take part in. And when you take part and submit, you can win NFTs. And so we used to have this as the weekly challenge that Ivan did when he gave his Wednesday videos, when he'd give it the Wednesday fireside chat updates. If you're familiar with, if you've been with Moralis for a while and you've watched Ivan, then you've probably seen those where people will create a project because he'll give a weekly challenge and then demo those projects during the next week. And the whole community kind of votes and decides which one is the one they like, and then they choose, and that person would get an NFT. So now this is turned into something a little bit bigger, where more people can be involved, and you can find out more information again on Discord. And as I mentioned, in addition to Discord, we have the forums. And so I'm going to go to forums.moralis. Okay. Forum.moralis, no S. And again, there's a large community. So this is the space, if you have more technical questions about the projects you're working on or the demos you see, then you can ask them here. And there is a channel specifically for Unity questions, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. All right, let's get into Moralis itself. If you don't have a Moralis account yet, then you go to moralis.io and it'll take you to login. And you can create your account, or if you have an account, you can log into it. And this is very important for when we're looking at our demo in a few minutes. Question while this is coming up: am I going too fast? I want to make sure that I'm not talking too quickly. If someone can let me know. Okay, this is not cooperating with me. There we go.
Yeah, going good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so when you log in, you'll get a list of the servers you've created. And with a free account, you can create up to 3. And just so you know, you can, with your free account, you can do everything in Moralis you can do with a paid account. The only difference is that it's limited to how many transactions you can do per second or minute. In fact, if you look at your server, you can see, so this one I've been using for a lot of testing, and it'll show you how much CPU you've been using in the last couple seconds, RAM, disks, everything else. So when these hit the limits, then what happens is you'll get an error back from Moralis letting you know that you've hit the rate limit. It'll actually be in the header of the message that comes back. Something else, if your app is working and you do a lot with it and suddenly it stops working, one of the first things to do is just to go to your dashboard and check out your log to see if you have any errors. Okay, so since I'm here, I talked about the database. So one of the cool things that Moralis gives you is a database, and when a user logs in and creates an account, it actually, depending on how your server is configured, it'll go to the chains you've selected to monitor for that server, and it will grab all the Ethereum transactions, token balances. You can see I've done a lot with Polygon with these accounts I've been using. It's actually with the Mumbai, the test network. But it captures all those transactions and then puts them in the database. And then also, if you look at the transaction log here, then there's this column called confirm. So you know that when you're doing contract transactions, that the contract gets the submission, your request is accepted, and then it's processed, and then it's put into a block, and then another block. And then once you have so many blocks, depending on that chain, how deep it is, then it's considered confirmed, because at a certain point, a certain depth, it can't be rolled back. And so when that happens, then the confirmed flag is set to true. So you can also monitor those transactions that way if you want to. Honestly, personally, this is the more difficult way to do it, in my opinion. I like to use the Web3 API for looking up transactions. It's just simpler, but this is available to you if you want it. It's one of the cool things. And
yeah,
okay,
I would just like to add, like, I'm a blockchain developer myself, and like whenever a person logs in, we need to know each and every token that person has, how many Ethereum the person has. Whenever you are creating authentication, so Moralis does a lot of good stuff for you in the back end. Like, these logs might seem a little heavy when you look at it first, but yeah, this is all the information which gets in here directly. So, and you can just use them. Continue, David. I just wanted to add that because
no, that's cool. So yeah, so I just went to, like I said, I do a lot on this test server with Mumbai, the Polygon network, and I can go to my Polygon balance and I can see for the users, all the users I've created the test with over the last few months. You can see what their balances are. So that's kind of cool. In addition to those tables, you can create your own. So you can have your own objects in your game. And it's just like, I guess I don't want to assume that everyone here has done C# before, which is what we use for Unity. So I can show this a little bit better once we get into the application. But if you've worked with the JavaScript SDK from Moralis, it's basically the same thing. So you can just create a regular object like you would in JavaScript or for Unity in C#, and you create the properties. And when you create an object and you fill in the properties, you can just say object.save, and then it ends up in your database. And so Moralis takes care of all that for you. It's this. So I guess it's a little early, but with the Moralis Unity SDK, or what we call the Moralis, I need to remember, we've started trying to standardize the naming with this past week. So instead of, I always call it the Moralis Unity SDK, but we want to start calling it the Moralis Web3 SDK for Unity. I know it's just a little different, but I want to try to remember those because my team members are going to talk to me about this after this video, I'm sure. Okay, so that made me lose my train of thought. Okay, so I was talking about the saving the objects. So the Moralis Web3 SDK for Unity gives you all the ability that the JavaScript, the Moralis JS JavaScript SDK does. So all the functionality, if you've used that one, you'll find that in the SDK that we've created for Unity. Okay, and you can see I've got some different tables here. All right, so we've talked about the database. We've looked at our logs. Logs are very, very important. This is the first place, if I'm running into issues I don't understand, I'll check the log to see if I'm doing something wrong, especially if I'm working with cloud functions. All right, let's look at cloud functions. Cloud functions are really cool. So these are like mini applications. If you've ever worked with Lambda functions in AWS, very similar. So these are all in JavaScript, and you can create them here, or much more powerful, you can use the standard Moralis CLI, and that's actually the better way to interact with your production and your development cloud functions. But cloud functions are just pieces of JavaScript code. They're functions in JavaScript that do specific functionality, and you can pass in different fields. You can make them public or require that the user be logged in. There are certain other cases where you want to lock them down even more. So this is a good transition just to step away from this real quick and point out that we've got docs.moralis.io. And this has all sorts of information that you can find about cloud functions, about plugins, about the database, the logs, just about everything in Moralis. You'll find little demos here and a lot of information. So that's something to keep in mind. The docs at Moralis to find information, forum.moralis to get questions answered. All right, so back to our admin panel and our cloud functions. So again, cloud functions are just little snippets of code that you can then call from your application. These can interact with the database. These can make web calls. These can do some Web3 calls as well. And I think the only thing that you don't want to do from this is make actual transactions with your secret key, with your wallet, because there would be some security risks involved in that. So you wouldn't want to do that. But just about anything you can do with a piece of JavaScript in a web application, interacting with Moralis, you can do in here as well. Okay, and then we talked about plugins. So our plugins are, again, sets of pre-made applications that you can access. And I have, for example, the OpenSea one here. I can go to my plugin store and I can see everything available. And I know one of the things that is coming up is that you'll be able to make your own plugins as well in the future. So these, again, are just little applications you can include. You can find out what they do by looking at Read More. And it'll give you instructions on how to use it. So again, I'm using the OpenSea, and I've played with this. Oh, that's no fun. That's not fun at all. Okay, let's try this again. All right, so there are my information. That's information. All right, let's try that again. Drum roll. Is it going to work this time? No. Oh, that's disappointing. Okay. Not sure what's going on there. I'll have to put a note about that. So let's go real quick to one of my other ones. I just wanted to show some of the information about that plugin because it's really cool. So go to the plugin store. This one, I haven't used it from here. Okay, so it's one of the wonderful things about live streaming is things don't always happen the way that you planned on them happening. So I'm going to step away from that. But again, your plugins are available. Did you have a question?
We have all been there. We have all been there.
Yeah, I know. This is so fun.
Harsh, we have a question. If you could.
Yeah. So the question is like, can we consider Moralis to basically be like AWS, Azure, but for Web3?
Exactly. And that's so cool. That's what got me into this. So I've been following Ivan for quite a long time, and I was in the academy for a while. When Philip and Ivan announced Moralis back in March of last year, I was really excited because that's what I saw. At that time, they basically only had the speedy nodes, and then they had the database with all the information. And that's kind of what they started with. And when I saw that, and then the ability to make cloud functions that they were wanting to add on, which they did within a few weeks, I thought to myself, okay, Ivan and Philip are going to create the AWS of Web3, just like you said. And yes, I see that. Something else they like to say on the team is that we're like the Firebase for Web3. So Firebase is a tool by Google that allows you to quickly create Web 2 applications. So Moralis helps you to quickly create Web3 applications. So yes, the Firebase or the AWS of the crypto world. And everything's still, so there's a lot here that's production, that's completely production ready. There's some things that we're still working on, and just like any startup, things happen. So like just happened with that plugin. So I apologize for that. I will check into that to find out what's going on. But it is there, and I'll have to look into that. Okay. So the final thing I want to cover on this before we get into our demo is our Web3 API. And this is also what we call the NFT API. So what you will find here is that there are several endpoints, and this is all open API. And so you can grab the whole JSON script or schema with this button. And you can see the endpoints that we have: native account, token, resolve, DeFi, storage, info. So I want to go into a couple of these. So first of all is your account. So your account endpoint gives you all sorts of information about a specific user. You can find out all of their transactions on a specific chain. You can look up their balances, the number of ERC tokens they've had, the number of transfers of those tokens. You can check out all the NFTs that they own and the transfers for those, and then also the NFTs for a specific contract that's owned by a user. So if I want to go in here, and I'm going to grab one of my test addresses. Okay, we're using Mumbai. And I want to try this out. So I'm going to select Mumbai and paste in my address. And I can see my balance. And if I go back to my wallet, you can see that matches. Of course, this doesn't show as much. The address doesn't show, the wallet doesn't show as many significant figures as does the actual balance. Okay, so you'll notice I was able to do that in real time. All of the endpoint operations that are here, you can test out right here on the admin console, so you can make sure that you have good values that you're testing with before you use them inside your application. Okay, so we talked about account, which gives you all sorts of information about your user. And then also for NFTs, a really cool thing is the token endpoint. So tokens allow us to do searches on ERC20 tokens and on NFTs. And so these operations allow us to find out general information about NFTs. And that can be their transfers, who they're owned by. And these are apart from a specific user. So everything in account endpoint is geared toward a specific address that you put in. And so you'll find out that you use these the most in your game when interacting with your users. And then for general information about tokens and NFTs, you'll find them in this endpoint with these operations. So native gives you information about a specific chain. And for gaming, the one that we use the most, or at least that we've used the most so far, and you might find this different, is the function. And so this operation allows you to run a contract function, but a read-only contract function. So you'll notice that everything inside the Web3 API is read-only. It's getting data only. I think the only one that doesn't is the sync. So there is, and I think it's under token, if I remember correctly, the address sync. So because the database is updating in real time, it can take a few minutes sometimes for your new NFT that you've minted to show up. And so one thing you can do to kind of give it priority for your database is to call this NFT sync, and it will look at that contract, look at the transactions that just recently happened, and then add them to the database faster. It kind of gives you priority in the queue for your database for syncing those up. But everything else is a read only. So I can call a contract function. Let's say I want to get the URI, or I want to check a balance, or I have a specific function on my contract. Maybe it's to get player data of some sort that I've put on the contract. I can read that by using this function, and I'll show briefly in the code. And I can see this is taking a little bit more time than I was expecting. So I'm going to speed it up here just a little bit. Okay, also that you want to look at is storage. This allows you to upload information to IPFS. If you're not familiar with IPFS, it's like having a document storage database that's decentralized. IPFS stands for Interplanetary File System, and it's been around for a while. It's kind of now the go-to place for putting large chunks of data. So things like images or the metadata for your NFT, folders of files, and so on. Okay, and then there are others as well. So I invite you to, as you're able to go through these and find other ones that you might be interested in. Again, the ones for games that we see being used the most are in account, token, in native, the contract function, and then using IPFS. So there are a lot of other operations available too, for different decentralized applications that we don't necessarily, normally use in a game, but they're available. So don't overlook looking at DeFi and info, resolve, and so on. Okay, so I am going to go back to my slides really quick. I love the memes. So what can we build? So with Unity 3D, obviously we can create 3D games. Unity is also very well known for creating 2D games. So you've probably also heard, if you're into gaming or creating games, you may have heard of something called Unreal Engine. And Unreal is really good for first-person shooter games. That's what it was created for. But it's more difficult for new programmers to use. It uses a programming language called C++, which is a little bit more difficult than C# for a couple different reasons. You have to do memory management and others. Also, the community for Unreal isn't as big as the community for Unity 3D. And generally, people that are starting out in gaming find it easier to create their games using Unity 3D because there are a lot more tutorials and examples available. Again, the community is bigger. C# is a little bit easier to use. And Unity 2D is definitely a better platform for creating 2D or tiled games if you're creating that kind of game. So Unity doesn't do some of the lighting and some of the realism just as well as Unreal does, but generally when you're creating those type of games, they're really high level first-person shooters, multiplayer games like that. You need a larger team. So if you're an indie developer creating your first game or your first set of games, you'll find that it's a little bit easier to do it using Unity. Unity has specific plugins for VR course, we know that metaverse has been in the news quite a bit. Now, some of us define metaverse a little bit different than others. To me, the metaverse is basically all the applications that are available on the internet, all the different world spaces that people have created, whether they're games or VR chat rooms and so on. Those are all little individual spaces that make up the whole metaverse. Okay, so we are going to look at our demo, which we've put together to kind of highlight the Moralis Web3 SDK for Unity. And that is here. If you just go to Google and type in Ethereum boilerplate, you'll go there. The JavaScript one will come up, but if you scroll down the page, you'll find the Unity one. We also have a UPM package available, and we'll be saying more about that later. So I want to go to Teams again. To go here. And again, at the Ethereum Unity boilerplate. And I want to go to my latest release. And I'm going to download the package. And I'm going to go to Unity. And I'm going to create a new project. And oops, I misspelled that. Oh, well. It's just a demo, right? So that's going to take a second to come up. And I can check to make sure that that is downloaded and ready to go. So while that is setting up, I want to go back to this page. We have a pretty extensive set of setups for the demo. Now, with the UPM package, it does some of this for you. Unfortunately, with the way the Unity package works, that we drop in the assets folder, some of it's a little bit more manual. But we talk about what has to be done and some of the gotchas. One of the gotchas you'll run into with newer versions of Unity is that it no longer packages Newtonsoft. And Newtonsoft is a library that allows you to take objects and serialize them, which means turn them into a string that's easy to pass around, on the network, or to take a string that's an object and deserialize it back into that object. So that is no longer bundled with Unity, and we have to create a reference. So again, the UPM package will actually do that for you. The manual drag and drop version, we have to do that. So you'll see that when I drop my assets in here, because this has come up, we'll get an error almost right away. And it's just one of the things with, all right, why did that drop? Oh, because I'm on console. Okay. So I'm going to drop that into assets. Now, you can use this to start your own game as well. There are some steps you'd want to take. So we have all of the stuff that's the example, which we'll bring up in a minute. And what you can do for your own game, once you've played around with it and you're familiar with this a little bit more, you'll see that this isn't too difficult, though it can be a little confusing. Basically, everything that's in the example folder, you can delete if you want to. It's only there for the demo. All the Moralis code is in other folders. Now, of course, we're going to leave it in because we want to use the example right now. But you'll see that we've got a tool called GIF Decoder. That is there so that you can easily work with GIF images programmatically. Unity does not support those out of the box. So when you're working with the IDE, you can drag GIF images in and it knows how to process them. But in-game, programmatically, it does not read or manipulate GIF images naturally. And so you have to use a third-party library, which is why I included that. We have all of our Moralis code underneath Moralis. And then some others. Okay, I know I said I was going to go faster, and here I'm lollygagging again. I'm getting into too many details. Though sometimes the details I know are good. All right, so while that is happening, let's go back real quick to our admin panel. And I want to go back to my servers. So one of the things on the servers you'll see are these details, and this gives you the URL for your personal server that you've created, and then your application ID plus some other information. So these can be used safely in your client. Things like your master key, your dashboard password, your CLI API key. You do not want to put those inside your game. Because once you've published your game, people have access to the code. Even though it's a binary, they can still decompile it and so on and get your information that you don't want them to have. But this information is safe. And so we need these two pieces of information, server URL and application ID, to tell our game how to connect to Moralis itself. All right, so you can see that we have our error, like I said. And so what I want to do is on assets, I'm going to right click and I'm going to select show in Explorer, and it'll show me assets. And again, these steps are right here. So I'm going to select the packages and look at manifest JSON. And I just need to add an entry for Newtonsoft. So I'm going to go to packages, manifest JSON, open it with my text editor. Okay, text editor. I said I'm going to open it with my text editor. Oh, okay. I didn't see it. For whatever reason, it came up minimized, which is weird. And I'm going to paste that in. I know it's a little OCD for me to make everything line up, but I'm going to save that. And then when I do and go back to Unity, it's going to reload. Okay. And then we'll see something else. And this looks a little scary when it says unsafe code. Again, this is in our steps. Let's see where. I know it's in the steps here, maybe above. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. So you'll see this instruction if you see this error. And again, the UPM package takes care of this. Unsafe code is a normal thing in .NET. We use Ethereum to talk to Web3, and it needs to do some special mathematical functions and do them as fast as possible. And so .NET, as defined by Microsoft, allows you to use what's called pointer math. If you've ever worked with C or C++ and performed inline assembly, which if you've done game programming in those languages, then you've probably done, it's basically the same thing. So the name unsafe is a little misleading. It makes it sound scary, but it's not. And so we're just telling Unity that it needs to add a modifier to the build command that just tells .NET that, hey, we're taking advantage of this. And so I'm just going to check that box. And when I go back, all right, now I've got to take care of my server URI. So I'm going to go to the SDK, my example, and open my demo scene. So again, that's Moralis Web3 API SDK example. And in that folder, you'll see the demo scene. And I go to Moralis setup. Oh, good news on this. So right now you've got to click, 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 click to get to here. One of the things we're working on right now is to make this more user-friendly. And in the future, when you open up the Moralis Web3 SDK for Unity, it's going to pop up a setup menu that allows you to put this in right away, instead of giving you this error, and then you have to go here and you have to click and you've got to click. So it'll just bring the pop-up and you can put the information in directly. So I'm going to go back to my admin panel and click this. And then I'm going to grab my API ID. Okay. And at that point, I should be able to run this. And I'm going to use my phone. So I got this set up as a desktop application, so it uses a QR code. So I am using MetaMask, if MetaMask will find my face. Let's try that again. Again, everything with live presentations is fun. There we go. Okay, it finally found my face. All right, so I'm going to hit the authenticate button. I'm going to scan my QR code, and it's telling me to connect to the site. So I'm allowing the game to talk to my wallet, and then it's giving me a sign message. And so I'm going to sign. And you can see that now my address for my wallet shows up above my player, and I can move about the screen. And this demo doesn't really do much. It does show how to use a health bar. It's got this cool effect with the sword. It does allow you to kill the orcs if you want to. And then there's a chest. And if you bash the chest, now I've already owned it, so it's not there with this address. I wish now I'd use a different address. But actually, if you haven't claimed it already, there's a little mug that pops up. That's an NFT. And then you can click on it and claim the NFT. All right. So we're now 48 minutes into the presentation. And so I want to take time right now to just real quick. Uh-oh. I clicked on the wrong spot. Okay, so we've shown the boilerplate project. Oh, yes. So you can do, I said desktop, but you can also do this for web, for iOS, and for Android. And for iOS, you've got to have a Mac to actually do the final compile and moving it to your phone or to the store. We talked about what you can delete, basically everything under the example folder. What must you keep? Anything under the Moralis folder. The scene objects that I use in the demo, those are all free objects. And so you can use the ones that are there, or of course you can use the asset store from Unity to pull in more objects. Okay. So at this point, I would probably dig into the code. I know we're getting really, really long. So how is everyone feeling? Do we have a good feeling in the room about how everyone is? Is everyone getting bored, or do we want to look into the code more?
I'm personally enjoying it, like having learning about Unity.
Well, it's important because I talked about some of the differences between Unreal and Unity. And I know there are some JavaScript programmers here that may not have seen C# yet. So if everyone's okay, I'm going to take a few minutes and go into some of the code of the demo. But if you could check the chat and just give me some feedback, how everyone's feeling. I just want to make sure that we're not boring anybody. Oh, so one note, when you're in the IDE and you quit the game, it doesn't actually close the window. That's the way that Unity works in the IDE. And so you have to just click the stop play because it's giving you chances to debug like your quit events and so on. So it actually keeps the application running even though you've quit it. All right. So I'm in Unity. I guess I should have said more about this because I know a lot of people are new to it. And unfortunately, I can't make the text bigger. But this is a standard layout. I've got my hierarchy, which gives me everything that's in a scene. I've got my screen window, and this allows me to look at specific things and zoom in on them, see where they're at, to place stuff in the scene. The game window kind of shows me some of what the game is. So right now I've got a lot of UI layered on top of this, so you don't see it in development mode. But if I go into the game, run the game, you saw that it, shows the way you'd expect it to. I can change the way this looks by changing the resolution. If I'm developing for mobile, I can create mobile phone, aspects for different Android phones or iOS devices. Let's see. So the inspector gives you specific information about your different objects. If you're new to Unity, run some Unity tutorials. There are a lot out there on YouTube. The Unity website itself has what's called Unity Learn, and it has some really good tutorials in that. And it'll explain, what all this is. Because right now this can look very confusing. What's a mesh renderer? What's a collider? A rigid body? What do those do? And unfortunately, I don't have enough time right now to go into each of these because each one is a lesson on its own. But if you go through tutorials, it'll walk through these. So just briefly, mesh is the 3D object. We call it the physical object, even though it's a digital object that's shown on screen. But because it's shown on screen, we call it in 3D, we call it a physical object, if that makes any sense to anybody. Colliders allow us to, what it says is detect when an object hits another object. And then a rigid body is a construct that allows us to apply physics to our physical objects in our game. So things like gravity or what happens, how they react when two objects collide. So it detects the collision. So do they just stop? Do they bounce off? Do they act like pool balls and shoot around all over the place when they hit each other? So all that's defined by your rigid body. And again, anything that you click on is going to have just different information. So you saw here, I've got basically just a container that allows me to arrange my other objects easier. And then the project itself is in assets. And then it shows me the specifics of each folder. So I can open up my C# project. And what I did is I right-clicked and I selected Open C# project. I know I'm trying to be, I'm getting into the details again because I want to talk about them, but I know that we're short on time and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Let's see, we can go into our assets. And so the C# solution has all of our C# scripts, and C# is the language that we use in Unity. It's a language that was created by Microsoft. If you've used Java or JavaScript, you'll find that it looks very similar. And let's start with Moralis controller. This is one of our base objects that we use. And you'll see what are called pre-processed commands somewhere, here and there. This tells Unity that if we're creating a certain build, to use specific pieces of code. For example, if we're doing WebGL to build a web browser, it requires a different functionality than like a desktop or iOS or Android application would. Like Java, or if you've used C or C++, then each file is going to start with a list of libraries that it wants to be able to use within that file. And so for C#, we use the using command, and then this points to specific folder. We call it a namespace, but in the hierarchy here, it's actually in a folder. So I can go to Moralis platform. And so anything that's in this is going to have that namespace. Okay, so we start with our namespace, and then we have within it a class. A class is an object. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these terms. If you've used Java, JavaScript in the past, you probably have. And mono behavior is very specific to Unity. It's very important to think about. So the mono behavior class that these descend from allow us to kind of tie into the life cycle of the game. So things like when the game wakes up, when it starts, each time it does a frame update, when the game ends, and so on. And again, you'll find that in the Unity documentation. So the mono behavior also allows you to interact with the logger and some other specific Unity things. So you tie the script in to an object that's in Moralis, in Unity. So like I have these orcs, and within the orc, I've got what's called an orc controller. And if I look at chest, there's a chest controller. And if I look at the player, where is my player controller? Oh, right there in front of me. If it was a snake, it would have bitten me. So what that allows me to do is directly access that physical game object. So the information about it, whether it's the position it's in the world or its rotational information, its scale. And so I can check those values. I can check events happening with collision or with the rigid body. Remember gravity and physics. And I can interact with those all programmatically as long as I have an object that's descendant from mono behavior. All right. So I know I switched from Moralis controller to player controller, but again, we've got our input. Then we have a set of variables that we're using. Public variables, when they're tied to that object, will actually show up inside Unity. And again, if you look at them at the Unity documentation, you'll see that. Okay. And then we have functions. So we have our lifecycle functions. And what's cool, Visual Studio will actually tell you that this is a Unity function. So when you type it in and start using it, it'll actually label them as Unity functions. So you can quickly tell which ones belong to Unity and which ones are ones you're using. So this is a lifecycle event called start. So when the application starts up, it automatically performs this information or these functions. When every time that it does an update, it's going to perform these checks and functions. So this is stuff like, I want to make sure that I'm already logged in. If I'm not logged in, I don't want to be able to move the character. If I am logged in, I want to react to the keyboard and mouse input and so on. And so like this is not a Unity one. This is one I created. So joystick, this is for mobile applications actually. So like the desktop one we were looking at didn't have the joystick showing. But you can check move. It basically sets the different animations for our character, reacts to the keyboard, and so on. All right, so that is C# code. And wow, we're already near an hour. So real quickly, I feel like I'm rushing this so quick. This is really important tools. So very quickly, again, the Moralis Discord, the Moralis DAO is our Discord server. Make sure that you join that and check that out. You can post questions there. You can interact with other developers and just have discussions about life, the universe, and everything. Some threads within the service that are cool. The game dev thread. There are several of us that monitor that. So you can ask questions about React gaming development or JavaScript gaming development or Unity gaming development. Excuse me. Dev chat only is another thread that you can go to just to talk with other devs. And then in Moralis in India is a special channel that was set up for all of our Unity or all of our devs that are in India that want to be able to talk to each other and to find each other easily. We talked about the Moralis forum, and so forum.moralis.io and Moralis documentation, docs.moralis.io. So again, if you have very technical, whoops, wow, I did it again. So I clicked the button. Didn't mean to click the button. I was just trying to show this. Okay, so if you have technical questions that need to go to a Moralis teammate, then you ask them in the forum. You can ask them in Discord as well, but Discord is kind of more general discussion. And then the Unity manual, Unity Learn, Unity Asset Store, YouTube. These are all great sources of information for learning about Unity games. A lot of tutorials in both Unity and YouTube. And then some side material, side items. The GIMP is a free, it's like Photoshop, but it's free. It's really cool. Blender is a 3D modeler. If you want to create your own 3D assets, characters, you want to create animations. Again, there's a huge Blender community. It's completely open source. It's free. Big community on YouTube and on the web. And then if you're just looking for some quick characters to use, they're not always the most polished, but they have a lot of animations. It's really cool to play with, really fun. Mixamo. And those are also free, though you have to sign up and give them your email. Wow, that's gone by so quick, everybody. I didn't even get to cover everything I wanted to, but it's time for questions and answers. And I feel like I need to hear from you. How's everyone feel? Hope you're excited about Moralis and about using Unity and creating your own games.
Yeah, pretty excited. In the GirlScript Summer of Code, we do have multiple projects which use Moralis already, and yeah, they're not like Unity, but like they are React projects. So yeah, the boilerplates are pretty popular.
Also as a web developer, I always wanted to move to something more like something that can use the Web3 APIs as well. So I always wanted to have the integration of Unity and Moralis, my favorite, right? So I hope I can get into it after this stream.
Sure. And again, like I said, we monitor the Discord and the forum. So if you have any questions, general queries, you're trying the demo and you run into something that you don't understand, or you run into a problem, let us know. So any questions from the chat?
Yeah, so like I guess this is one of the very common questions. So like majority of the audiences, they are still students and like they are pursuing their graduation and stuff. So what do you consider like how do you consider, what are your thoughts of pursuing game development and blockchain as a career choice? Like if you would like to share some thoughts on that.
So right now, especially if you're using NFTs, Web3 games are very hot. Especially if you're joining it. Well, I'm going to say especially, but I mean, whether you're joining a big team, creating a game, or you're working with some friends to create your own game, whether you're using JavaScript, React, or Unity, if you can create a game that's engaging, especially that has the NFTs, I think you can do pretty well with that, actually. Again, NFTs are really hot right now. In-game NFTs, it's cutting edge. It's still very, very early, still new. And so there's still a lot of room for expanding. So one thing I want to lead into with that, especially since you're saying, a lot of people that are involved in this are students. When you're a new developer, you can get really excited in your idea and you kind of rush into it, and then you'll hit a wall, something that you don't quite get, that's not working the way it's advertised. It can be so frustrating. Take a step back, get a coffee, go sit on a hill, watch some birds, and then go back and work on the problem again. And then just repeat that until you get through it. Search Google, search YouTube. Don't give up on your idea just because it seems a little difficult. Maybe it's something that's too big for one person and you need multiple people, especially if you're really good with programming, but maybe not so good with designing. Designing isn't my specialty. My characters and designs kind of look a little clunky sometimes, but I like to work with a good designer, and then I'll do the development because that's my specialty. So I guess I would give advice, find a good team to work with, a couple friends, or people that you work well with, and then give yourself time and room to fail, and use the failure as a learning experience, not a discouragement. I think that's one of the big obstacles that people run into, is that you have an idea, a picture in your head, and you don't quite have the experience yet. And I've been programming for close to 30 years now, and I still run into these issues. You might think, well, how is that possible? Well, there's still stuff that is new because there's just way too much to learn when you're programming. And so when you run into those obstacles, it can be very frustrating and very discouraging, and you want to give up. The best thing to do when you feel that is to just step back from your computer, go do a different activity, and then get back to it when your mood's a little bit better. So don't let your mood spoil your programming experience. And just because you run into an issue and something doesn't work, well, you've discovered a way it doesn't work, and so now you can try something else. I know it's old and pithy when you talk about Edison taking, having to create 1,000 light bulbs to finally get it right. But that is really true when you're working through any problem set, especially something that is so new and cutting edge as Web3 development. So give yourself plenty of space, and especially in your own mind, because we can be our own worst critics, that if I fail, it doesn't mean I'm a failure unless I just completely give it up. So if something doesn't work and it frustrates me, I'm not a failure. I can step back, do something else, come back to the problem. I cannot tell you how many times I have been just about to wake up and suddenly in my dream, I'll solve a programming problem, or I'll be out mowing the yard and my mind's just blank, just concentrating on the hum of the lawnmower and the birds singing and whatever. And suddenly the answer comes to me, or I'm in the shower just trying to wake up, and then suddenly the answer comes to me. That happens over and over and over. And as you gain experience, you'll see the same thing. So don't give up just because you get frustrated. You're not a failure until you quit. So hopefully that helps too. Any more questions?
Yeah, very wise words. Hope those that's a real cool motivation you just gave to all the audience.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there's just one more this question, so what happens, there are a lot of self-taught programmers as well, someone who is from a non-tech background, but
Yep.
they get into programming later on via boot camps or crash courses or some stuff. So would you just quickly give a sort of a roadmap about just bulletin points about how one can get started and then get acquainted with projects and stuff, a quick roadmap sort?
All right. So 1, you have the interest, you have an idea. 2, you start playing with code. So if you are completely unfamiliar with the code, get into some tutorials, different courses through Treehouse, Udemy, other type of online courses like that. If you know developers that you can talk to them. So 1, your idea and an interest. 2, teach yourself to program. Okay. Or if you're learning a new language, my first language was BASIC on the Atari. I know I'm really showing my age here. But I learned how to program in BASIC on the Atari, on the Commodore, on an IBM PC we had at school. And what else? I think I had a friend that had a TRS-80. So I learned BASIC, and then I made the move to C++. And that was such a huge difference because the syntax was so different. The layout of the language was so different. And I was frustrated for a month trying to figure out what was going on. I thought it was impossible. And then it finally struck me that all the constructs, all the programming ideas that were in BASIC were in C. They were just shaped a little bit differently. So loops were loops, variables were variables, conditionals were conditionals, operators were operators. They might have been a little bit different between BASIC and C, but they're all the same. And once that clicked for me, I finally had the idea that I could map to any language. And so it became very easy after C for me to pick up Java, Python, Erlang. What else have I worked with? Natural, COBOL, and so on. So learn the language, or if you need to learn a new language, work through tutorials, and then keep in mind the idea that all the programming concepts you learned for that first language are in the second language. So you just have to learn the syntax, and don't let that trouble you. So your idea, your interest, learning the language, finding a community. And so that community can be your online community for YouTube. It can be for the Unity forums, the Moralis forums, Moralis Discord. It can be friends. And then at that point, just start working on your idea until it's done. So I guess that's the most basic summary I can give. But a lot of that is just keeping yourself motivated and working through the problems.
Yeah. One I just think like one point which should be added is like learning by doing. Like get yourself into their head of all. And once you like have that one bug which like strains you for like a few hours, and then you get it solved, that dopamine release gets you enough motivation to
yeah, you're right. You're very right. So yeah, solving a problem that you've been banging your head against for a couple hours or a couple of days, that is such a rush. You're right.
Yeah, so if you guys are just like someone who wants to get started with like building Web3 projects, there are tons of tutorials on Moralis Web3 YouTube channel. You can just like follow them end to end, and you'll have a project under your GitHub profile. So like that's one way to start with. So yeah, and I don't think so like we have any more questions. Thank you, David. That's been like a very cool time. Like we enjoyed you deep diving us like into the Unity and the Moralis SDK.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to share. It's been an honor and a privilege. I hope to see you guys on Discord on the forums. I know a couple of you already reached out to me on LinkedIn, so that was cool. I'm on LinkedIn. You just find me, David Goodrich, and I'd be happy to say hi.
Also, people, I've shared the Moralis YouTube channels and all in the web chat, so you can follow it if you like. Like if you're keen on getting started with this, you're as excited as me, right? So that's about it. Harsh, you wanna add something?
No, like yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay, it's a really great session. So
cool.
Thank you for being here.
Fine, guys. We'll see you. We got some more events like these lined up, and yeah, let's get building stuff.
The force is strong with Web3.
Fine, guys. Bye bye.